Captain Reyes stood on the bridge of the Starlight Dawn, his eyes fixed on the glowing wall in front of them. The edge of the galaxy was unlike anything he had seen before. It was not just space. It shimmered like a giant silver curtain, stretching across the stars. Behind them was everything they knew: Earth, the colonies, the war, the history of mankind. But beyond this wall, there was only silence. No one knew what lay past it. Every ship that had gone near this part of the galaxy had either turned back or never returned. The Galactic Wall was not just a name, it was a warning. The crew was quiet. No one spoke. The tension in the air was heavy. Everyone on the ship had trained for this mission, but now that they were here, doubt filled their hearts. The ship's navigator, Evelyn, checked the readings again and again, but they didn't help. Nothing made sense this close to the wall. The stars blinked in strange ways. Signals came in and vanished without reason. Time seemed slower, like it was being pulled back. Rhys took a deep breath. He was not a man who believed in fear, but this place made even him uneasy. Earth Command had ordered them to find out what was beyond the wall. They believed there was more space, more stars, maybe new worlds. But the captain wasn't sure anymore. He had heard the old stories: ships lost, strange voices in the dark, messages that made no sense. Lieutenant Rika spoke up softly. "Sir, the wall, it's moving." Rhys looked again. She was right. The silver wall wasn't just still, it flowed like water or smoke. It rippled, slowly, calmly, but with power. The ship's lights flickered once, then returned. Alarms didn't go off, but the crew looked around nervously. Something was happening. "Full stop," Rhys said. The engines slowed. The ship hovered just a few kilometers from the wall. No one spoke. Then something even stranger happened. The wall didn't wait for them to enter. It cracked. A loud, deep sound echoed through the ship, though there was no air outside. It was like the ship itself felt the sound. The wall in front of them split open, not from their side, but from within. A line of light formed, sharp and straight, and widened like a door. But the light wasn't warm. It was dark and cold. A black glow poured out. It looked alive. The ship's alarms screamed. The controls blinked red. Ava shouted, "System failure. Engines offline. Navigation offline." Rika tried to reset the main panel, but nothing worked. The ship was floating with no power, drifting toward the opening in the wall. And they weren't moving by force. They were being pulled in. "Brace for entry," Rhys yelled. But it was too late. The ship passed through the wall. For a few seconds, everything went black. Total silence. No lights. No sound. No feeling. It was like the ship didn't exist anymore. Then, just as suddenly, the lights returned. The crew gasped. They were on the other side. Rhys stood up slowly. He looked at the view screen. What he saw made his heart stop. This wasn't space. Not as they knew it. The stars were wrong. They were scattered like broken glass. Some were too big, some too close. Others pulsed like heartbeats. And the colors, green, red, violet, all mixing and moving like oil in water. But the worst part was what lay ahead. In front of them was black space. Not empty space, but something darker than darkness. It had shape, like it was thick. And it moved. Ava whispered, "Sir, something's out there. It's watching us." Rhys didn't answer. He felt it too. A pressure in his mind. Like a cold hand on the back of his neck. Every part of his body told him to leave. But the ship's engines were still dead. They were stuck here. They checked the systems again. Slowly, power returned. Not all of it, but enough to move. Rhys ordered the crew to pull back, but the wall was gone. Behind them, there was only more of this strange space. The crack they came through had vanished like it was never there. Panic started to grow among the crew. One of the younger engineers started crying. Rika told him to stay calm, but her own hands were shaking. This place wasn't just strange, It felt wrong. Suddenly, the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the room. Then a voice came through. It was faint, but clear. A human voice. A woman's voice. She said, "Help us. Don't come. Too late. It sees you. It sees." The message cut off. Ava looked at Rise. That was human. That voice was human. But how? Rika asked. No one has ever come back from beyond the wall. That message came from here. Rise felt cold inside. It means we're not the first. They traced the signal. It came from a nearby star system. One of the stars there looked strange. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Around it was a single dark planet. No other planets, no moons. Just one lonely world in the black. Against better judgment, Reese made a decision. Set course. We're going to find out what happened to the last ship. The Starlight Dawn moved forward, deeper into the unknown. The crew was silent. No one felt safe. Even with the lights on, the ship felt darker. Shadows seemed longer. Doors made sounds they didn't before. The ship was changing. Hours passed. Time felt strange. Ava said they had only been inside this space for 2 hours. But to the crew, it felt like a day. Dreams became worse. Some crew members saw people in the halls who weren't there. One said he saw his dead brother. Another heard a child laughing in the air vents. Riz tried to keep control. He ordered everyone to stay together, work in teams, keep records. But fear was growing fast. They all felt it. Something was here. And it was watching. They reached the planet. It was dark, covered in black rock and red fog. But they saw something impossible. Buildings, structures, not alien, but human. Made of the same metal as Earth's space stations. Lights still blinked. The last human ship had come here, and stayed. A landing team prepared to go down. Reese chose only trusted crew, Ava, Rika, and 2 soldiers. They landed near the biggest structure, a tower that looked like a control center. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was a little heavier than Earth's. They entered the building. Dust covered everything, but the place still had power. Screens blinked weakly. A recording played on repeat. A man's voice, slow and broken, said, "We opened it. We shouldn't have. It learns. It copies. It waits. Don't bring it home. Don't." It stopped. They moved deeper. They found signs of a fight. Burn marks. Broken walls. But no bodies. Only helmets, gear, and blood. Then, they found a large room filled with writing. Not human language, but strange symbols mixed with English letters. It looked like someone had tried to write a warning in every language they could. Rika turned pale. She pointed to one part of the wall. It said, "The wall is a prison. It keeps the thing inside. Don't break it." Suddenly, the radio buzzed. A voice came through. "Captain, we have a problem. Something got on the ship." It was the engineer on the Starlight Dawn. His voice shook. "It's not one of us. It looks like Ava, but it's not her." Rice turned to Ava. She was standing next to him. Everyone froze. Something had copied her. And it was already on their ship. The message from the engineer still echoed in Rice's ear as he stood in the ruined tower on the dark planet. He looked at Ava beside him. She stared back, just as confused and afraid. She hadn't left his side since they landed. But the voice on the radio had said something that looked like her was already on the ship. Riz didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing: it wasn't safe to stay. They ran back to the landing shuttle. The fog outside was thicker now. The air felt heavier. Riz felt like something was pushing on his chest. Rika kept looking over her shoulder. She said she heard someone whisper her name, but no one was there. The soldiers didn't speak. Their eyes moved fast, scanning the fog for any movement. When they reached the shuttle, the door was open. That was wrong. They had locked it. Inside, one of the soldiers found a trail of black liquid, like oil, leading from the control panel to the back. But there was nothing there. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Rise flew the shuttle back to the Starlight Dawn as fast as he could. The ship looked the same from the outside, but the moment they docked, something felt off. The lights in the docking bay were dim. A soft humming sound filled the air. It wasn't the engine. It was like someone singing in a low, deep voice, but the words weren't human. They entered the ship with weapons ready. The hallway was empty. Reyes called the bridge. No answer. He called engineering. Nothing. Finally, the engineer who had sent the warning answered. His voice was weak. "It's still here." It took Jones. He looked at it. Then he changed. Reyes asked him where he was. The engineer said he was hiding in storage room B7. They rushed there. On the way, they saw strange signs on the walls. Long black marks, like something had been dragged across the metal. One light flickered and buzzed. Rika stopped and stared at it. Rhys pulled her away. "Don't look too long," he said. He didn't know why he said it, but his instincts were screaming. They found the engineer in B7. He sat in the corner, holding a power tool like a weapon. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept. His hands shook. He told them what had happened. After they went to the planet, a crew member saw someone in the hallway. It looked like Ava. But when he spoke to her, she didn't answer. She just smiled. Then she walked through a wall and disappeared. After that, strange things happened. The lights changed color. The ship's air started speaking in a new voice. Deeper, colder. Doors opened and closed on their own. The crew got scared. Some locked themselves in their rooms. Others started acting strange. One by one, they stopped answering calls. The engineer said he saw one of the crew walk into the engine room and just vanish into thin air. "It's not killing us," he whispered. "It's learning us." Rhys looked at Ava again. She looked back, still scared. But now Riz wondered, what if the thing that copied her could do it again? What if anyone on the ship could be the thing now? They returned to the bridge. It was empty. The chairs were out of place. The control panels were glowing, but the screen showed only static. Then, for a moment, all the static cleared. The main screen showed a star field, but it was upside down. And in the center was a shape. Not a ship, not a planet, a figure. It looked human, but its body was too tall, too thin, and its face was a blur. The figure tilted its head slowly. Then the screen shut off. Ava stepped back. Rika raised her weapon. "What was that?" Rika asked. "I think it's what's waiting out here," Riz said. They checked the logs. Many had been deleted, but one file remained, recently recorded. It was from a crew member who hadn't returned. Her name was Sarah May. Her voice was calm, but broken. "We are not alone here," she said in the recording. "It's old, so old. It doesn't talk with sound. It talks with shape, with thought. It copies what it sees. It wants to understand us. And when it does, it will become us. This place isn't space. It's a mirror." The message ended. That night, no one slept. Rees ordered the ship sealed. No one could move around alone. Every crew member had to stay with a partner. But even with those rules, things got worse. People started forgetting things. One crew member swore she had only been on the ship for a week, but she had been there for 2 years. Another said he didn't remember his own name. Ava had a dream that someone stood over her bed and whispered, "You're not the real one." The ship's air went completely silent. The stars outside changed positions. The same planet they had visited now showed up in a different location on the map. Time and space no longer followed any rules. Then something new happened. A second ship appeared. At first, they thought it was a rescue. But the closer it got, the more they saw the truth. It was the Starlight Dawn. An exact copy. Same shape, same size, even the same damage on the hull. Rice called it. No answer. He sent a signal. No reply. The copy floated silently, like a ghost. Then its lights turned on. Slowly, one by one. The bridge, the engines, the docking bay. And then, its door opened. Rise had a choice. If they stayed here, the crew would fall apart. People were losing their minds. The food systems were failing. The ship was changing. But the other ship, what was it? A trap? A trick? Or a chance? Alva suggested sending a drone. They did. The drone entered the other ship. What it saw made everyone go silent. Inside was another crew. They were all there. Reyes, Ava, Rika. All of them. Standing still, not moving. Just staring forward. Like statues. Or dolls. Their eyes were open. But they weren't alive. The drone moved forward. The other Reyes turned his head. Slowly. And smiled. The drone feed cut out. No one knew what to do. Then someone knocked on the outside of their airlock door. A soft, gentle knock. Like fingers tapping metal. 3 knocks. Then silence. Reyes ordered everyone away from the door. But the sound came again. This time from the ceiling. Then from the floor. It was surrounding them. Later, Rika said she saw someone standing behind Reyes when he wasn't looking. But when he turned, no one was there. The engineer locked himself in the engine room. He said he was going to destroy the ship. He said it was the only way. But when they reached the engine room, he was gone. The word "Remembio" was written in black liquid on the wall. The crew was falling apart. Riz stood on the bridge and looked at the strange stars. He had never felt so helpless. He didn't know what was real anymore. The ship, the crew, even himself. Was he still human? Ava came to him quietly. She said, "I think we broke something when we passed the wall. We let something out." Reyes nodded. "Or we let ourselves in." A new message came through the radio. A voice spoke in clear English. It said, "You came to find the unknown. The unknown has found you." Then laughter. Not loud. Just soft. Like someone laughing in another room. They checked the logs again. A new one had appeared. It was a log from tomorrow's date. It read, "Captain Reyes destroyed the ship, but it was too late. The thing had already left." The crew looked at him. Reyes made his decision. The ship had become a shadow of what it once was. It wasn't just the darkness outside, or the strange signals coming from the depths of space. It was the air inside, the tension, the fear, the feeling that something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Riz stood in front of the control panel on the bridge. The stars outside flickered like fireflies, but they weren't the same stars they'd seen before. The patterns of light shifted, changed. The universe around them had become unstable. Time, space, everything was bending, stretching. They weren't even sure if they were still inside the galaxy, or if they had crossed into something else entirely. Ava stepped up beside him, her face pale. She hadn't spoken much since the ship had returned from the dark planet. Everyone was on edge. Some of the crew were showing signs of confusion, forgetting what they had done just hours before. The nightmares were getting worse too. Crew members would wake up screaming, claiming they had seen their own faces staring back at them from the walls. "Reyes, what do we do?" Alva asked softly. He looked over at her, his eyes heavy with worry. "We survive," he said. "We keep moving. We have to find a way back." But deep down, Reyes wasn't sure if there was a way back. The starlight dawn had crossed the wall, and now it felt like it was falling apart. Was the ship even real anymore? Was he? Rika, who had been quiet for the past few hours, suddenly spoke. "Captain, I think it's learning us. Whatever's out there, it knows us. It's changing us." Rice turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then continued, "It's not just that it copies us, it remembers us. Our faces, our movements, our words. The way we think. It's adapting to us. The longer we stay here, the more we change, the more it learns." A cold shiver ran down Rice's spine. You think it's inside the ship, taking over? Rika nodded. I think it's already done it. I think we're already too far gone. Look at the logs. Look at the crew. We're changing. Rice stared at the screens. There were no new messages, no new readings. The systems were glitching more than usual. He felt a deep unease, as though something was behind him, something that wasn't supposed to be there. He could feel the eyes of the crew on him, their stares full of doubt, of fear. I'm going to the engine room, Reese said, his voice firm. I need to check the power systems. Over, Rika, stay here and monitor everything. They nodded without speaking, both of them looking far too pale. The air in the corridors felt thick as Race walked alone through the ship. Every step echoed, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. He knew something was watching him, something waiting, something that remembered him from a time before, something that knew him too well. As he neared the engine room, he passed one of the crew members, a young officer who had been with them from the beginning. His face was blank, his eyes wide and unblinking. Reese stopped and called his name. Lieutenant Jarvis. The officer turned slowly. His mouth twitched into a strange, crooked smile. But his eyes didn't change. They were empty, no life behind them. Reese's heart skipped a beat. Lieutenant? He said again, but the officer didn't speak. He just stood there, staring at Rise. The longer Rise looked at him, the more the officer seemed to shift. His face was still familiar, but it wasn't the same. It was as if the officer was a mask, a shadow, something that didn't belong. Rise stepped back quickly. He had to get away. His instincts were screaming at him. As he moved, the officer didn't follow. But Race couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that something was lingering behind him, just out of sight. He reached the engine room and found it empty, except for the engineer, who was still locked inside. He had barricaded himself behind a series of shelves and lockers, his back to the door, his hands shaking as he worked on a console. His voice was shaky when he looked up. Captain, you're still here. I thought. Rice didn't let him finish. What's happening to the ship? The engineer's eyes darted nervously, and then he seemed to settle. The engines they're breaking down. Not in the normal way. The systems are changing. We're not going to make it. We can't get out. Rice felt a lump form in his throat. You're saying we're stuck here. There's no way back. The engineer just nodded. I don't think there's any going back, Captain. I think the ship's already gone. It's alive now. It's not just the crew, it's the ship itself. It's remembering everything. The ship has a mind of its own now. Before Rice could ask anything else, a loud crash echoed from deeper in the engine room. They both turned to see a shape moving in the shadows. At first, Rice thought it was a crew member, but then it stepped into the light. It wasn't human. The thing standing in front of them was tall, too tall. Its limbs were elongated, its face obscured by shadows, but Rice could see its eyes. Wide, too wide, like mirrors reflecting his own fear. Its body seemed to flicker in and out of focus, as though it wasn't quite solid. Rice stepped back, raising his weapon, but the thing didn't move. It just stood there staring. Captain, the engineer whispered, his voice breaking. It remembers you. Rice's heart raced. This wasn't just a copy of them. This was something worse. Something that had learned from them, something that could twist their faces and make them into nightmares. The thing moved closer. Its eyes stayed locked on Rice, unblinking, as if studying him. He could feel it in his mind, in his thoughts. It was in there, scraping through his memories, his fears, his secrets. The engineer screamed. It's not just us. It's in the ship. Rice shot his weapon. The thing staggered back, but it didn't fall. It didn't even seem hurt. Instead, it smiled. A smile that wasn't a smile at all, just a twisting of the face, a dark, mocking grin. Then, it was gone, vanished into the walls, as if it had never been there. Riss stood frozen, his weapon still raised. His breathing was heavy, but he couldn't move. The air in the room was thick with the presence of something that shouldn't be there. "Captain," the engineer said again, his voice trembling. "It's in the ship. It's in all of us." Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared, cutting through the silence like a knife. Rays spun around. The lights on the bridge had gone out. The screens were flashing red. Something was pulling them. Something was waking up. Riz ran back to the bridge, the engineer following him. But when they reached the door, it wouldn't open. The door was locked from the inside. A voice came over the intercom. Riz recognized it immediately. It was his own voice. "You should have left when you had the chance," the voice said, echoing in his ears. "Now you belong to it." Then the ship shook violently. Riz stumbled, grabbing onto the walls. The lights flickered, and everything seemed to move around him, slowly, like the ship was breathing. The thing was here. It had taken the ship. It was inside them now. They were all lost. The ship groaned as it shook again, harder this time. Riz could feel the walls bend around him, the metal stretching as though it was alive. The Starlight Dawn was no longer a ship. It was something else. Something that breathed, thought, and now controlled everything. They were trapped inside, but there was no escape. Not unless they could find the heart of the ship, the source of this madness. Riz stood at the door to the bridge, his hand gripping the cold metal. The voice, his own voice, still echoed in his mind. "You should have left when you had the chance," it had said. "Now you belong to it." The ship's lights flickered, dimming and brightening in a rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Riz could feel eyes on him, and not just from the crew. Something in the walls, in the floor, in the very air was waiting. The thing had learned, it had changed, and it was now in control. He looked at Ava and Rika, who had followed him into the hall outside the bridge. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with fear. They hadn't said much since the engineer had disappeared, but Riz could see that they were just as terrified as he was. "Captain," Rika whispered, "we need to shut it down. We need to burn everything. If we don't, it will take us, all of us." Rice didn't want to hear it, but deep down, he knew she was right. The thing wasn't just in the ship. It was in their minds, in their bodies. It had copied them, twisted them, and now it was controlling them. They couldn't fight it by themselves. The only way out was to destroy the ship. To burn it all. "We'll have to destroy the core," Ray said quietly. "It's the only way." Ava nodded. "We'll need to get to the engineering bay, the main reactor. That's where it all began." They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing down the dark, empty hallways. The ship felt like a labyrinth, with every corner seeming to hide something new, something that wasn't supposed to be there. Strange sounds filled the air, whispers, growls, the scraping of something moving just out of sight. At every turn, Reese expected to see one of them, a crew member, a friend, or even himself. The thing had already shown it could take their faces, mimic their voices. He couldn't trust anyone. Not anymore. As they approached the engineering bay, the door slammed shut in front of them, trapping them inside the corridor. Reese slammed his fist against the cold metal, but the door didn't budge. There was no way through. "Damn it," he cursed. "We're running out of time." Ava stepped back and looked at the walls. She seemed to be listening to something Weiss couldn't hear. Then she spoke in a low voice. "It's already here." Before Weiss could ask what she meant, the air around them shifted. The ship's walls seemed to bend and twist. Shadows formed at the corners of their vision, flickering like they were alive. And then, the floor beneath them trembled. The thing had found them. Riss drew his weapon, his heart racing. He didn't know if it would help, but it was all he had. The ship shook again, this time harder than before, as if it was alive and angry. "Stay close," Riss ordered. He could hear the panic in his voice, but he didn't care. They couldn't waste time. They had to stop it. The reactor was their only chance. They moved quickly, looking for another way inside. But as they rounded the corner, they were met with a nightmare. Standing in front of them were copies of themselves. Reese saw himself, tall, dark-eyed, and smiling that same twisted smile. Ava and Rika stared back at their own doppelgangers, faces pale, bodies trembling. "You shouldn't have come back," Royce's copy said, its voice deep and hollow. "Now you're ours." Ava took a step back, but the copy of Rise moved forward. Its arms stretched unnaturally long, reaching out to grab her. "No!" Reese shouted, stepping in front of Ava. He fired his weapon, but the shot went wide. The copy of him just grinned, the smile spreading across its face like a crack in the darkness. The ship shook again. This time, it wasn't just the walls that moved. The entire ship seemed to groan, a low, terrifying sound that made Rise's blood run cold. It was the sound of something waking up, something ancient, something that had been waiting. The floor beneath them cracked, and the lights went out. In the darkness, the copies began to move, crawling toward them, their limbs twisted and unnatural. Rise's heart pounded as he fired again, but the bullets had no effect. They kept coming. "We have to move," he yelled. Ava grabbed his arm and pulled him toward a small access hatch on the side of the hallway. They couldn't waste any more time. The reactor was their only hope. If they could get to it, they could end this. But the copies were closing in, their twisted faces still grinning. The hatch opened with a hiss, and they scrambled inside. The moment they were through, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping the copies outside. Reese could hear them pounding on the door, their distorted voices calling out. It didn't matter. They had to get to the reactor. Reese pushed forward, his breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The corridors felt like they were closing in, the walls pressing closer. Every step felt like it could be his last. They finally reached the engineering bay. The door opened with a creak, and they rushed inside. The room was filled with machinery, huge, humming generators that kept the ship running. But something was wrong. The main reactor at the center of the room was pulsing with an unnatural light, its core glowing a deep red. "This is it," Ray said, his voice tight. "We destroy the core. We burn it all down." Ava moved to the control panel, quickly pulling up the emergency shutdown sequence. But the system wasn't responding. She cursed under her breath. "It's locked. The ship's taken over everything. We can't shut it down." Rise looked at the reactor. There was a backup override system. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. "I'll do it," Ray said. He moved toward the reactor, ignoring the fear in his chest. If this didn't work, they were all dead. But they couldn't let the ship continue to exist. They couldn't let the thing win. He reached the control panel and began to manually enter the override sequence. But as he did, he felt a presence behind him, something cold and watching. He turned. There, standing in the doorway, was his own face. But this time, it was different. Its eyes were wide and empty, the smile gone. It was just staring at him, its mouth hanging open. "It's Oliver," the copy said, its voice hollow. "You can't stop it. It's already too late." Rice didn't hesitate. He slammed the override button. The reactor hummed louder, and then, with a loud explosion, the entire core of the ship lit up. The ship shook violently, the walls cracking as the energy surged through them. Race felt the heat, the burning light, and for a moment, he thought he could hear something scream. It was the ship. It was dying. The ship's systems went dark. The lights flickered one last time, and then everything went silent. Ava, Rika, and Riz stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the fading lights of the reactor. The ship was dead. The thing was gone. But as they walked away, Rice couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them. Something that had learned their names. Something that could never truly be destroyed. The Starlight Dawn was gone. But its legacy would live on in the shadows, in the things that remembered. And somewhere, in the depths of space, a new darkness waited.